Thank you all for joining us for the final luncheon and discussion of this weekend's activities. This discussion is called Widening the Pipeline to the Profession. We hope that you have benefited from the great conference and will take something back with you. There's been a lot of good nuggets that I think we all have shared. And I would like to thank the host organizations and the organizers. So the Rhode Island School of Design, the co-chairs, William Morris of Parsons and Pradeep Sharma of Rhode Island School of Design, Norma Millar and the ACSA board, and Michael Monty and the whole ACSA staff. Thank you very much for putting on the conference. I am Corey Saft. I am the ACSA Gulf Region Director. One of the roles that the regional directors play is to facilitate communication between the various member schools and the ACSA board, so that the ACSA board goes through the year well-informed about the opinions of the schools and can take that into account as they develop their strategies for the coming year. Over the past few months, many of you have given us input based on a survey that we sent out that covered a number of wide-ranging issues. How to most effectively communicate the value of an architectural education to the general public, and how the board can support member schools through the accreditation process, and issues of equity and diversity and the pipeline to the profession and what that will look like as we go forward. Our panel here is the outcome of that final question, and hopefully the first step in a continued dialogue about that. Our profession has some equity and diversity issues. It's been a discussion for a long time. It's been an interest to the board for a long time. And at some level, if you were to try and design a solution to those equity and diversity struggles, you might design something like the community college system to facilitate a solution. We have that community college, and the problem persists. So part of this discussion and the interest of the ACSA board is to try and figure out how we can begin to fine-tune that or structure the relationship so that we have greater success in terms of equity and diversity as the profession looks into its future. To engage this topic, we have representatives from a broad range of positions, including four-year non-accredited architectural department, minority-serving institutions, community colleges, and NAB accredited programs, all here, who will speak to their own situations. So I would like to introduce the panelists now. First is Marianne Akers on the far side, Dean and Professor, School of Architecture and Planning, Morgan State University in Baltimore. Next to her is Norman Millar, Dean and Professor, ACSA President, Woodbury School of Architecture, Los Angeles. Third is Jill Palmer Wood, Associate Professor, Architecture, Civil Engineering, and Construction Technologies at the Hudson Valley Community College, a SUNY two-year architecture program. Fourth is Bart, Cepeta, Associate Professor, Lead AP at Keene State College, Department of Architecture and Product Design. And right next to me is Randy Steiner, Lead AP, President, Coalition of Community College Architecture Programs, and President, Potomac Valley Architecture Foundation, Coordinator, Architecture Technology, Montgomery College, Rockville, Maryland. And then the original call that we gave to each of these participants, which they'll speak to. With growing pressure to minimize student debt, keep enrollments up, and expand the demographic and economic diversity of students joining into the profession, community colleges have emerged as a key partner for architecture schools. Recognizing the key role community colleges will play in developing an equitable and diverse profession, how do accredited schools recognize the range of quality of architecture programs within community colleges and establish an efficient mechanism to transition these students into accredited programs? So with that brief introduction, I'm going to ask Marianne Akers to come present her school.
Good afternoon. I'm Marianne Akers from Morgan State University, and I'm going to talk about our programs, the different pathways, and our strong linkage with community college in the area. I would particularly like to focus on our students. I held a focus group last week with our transfer students and asked them several questions. I asked them why did they select a specific path, and I'll talk more about those 3 paths that they can take. And did they have similar career goals, and that is to be licensed architects? Mainly because many of our traditional students, when they change their majors, they have to see me, the dean, because I always ask them, why did you put architecture as a major, and now you're transferring? I make sure that I understand where they're coming from. And so I wanted to make sure that our transfer students, that I hear their voices as well, because a lot of our traditional students say, oh, well, I chose architecture when I was a senior in high school, but I didn't know it was that hard. I didn't know that you had to put a lot of hours into it. I also asked the students, why did you choose Morgan? There are other programs in the area, but why Morgan? And then what are some of their challenges? So at Morgan State, we're an open access institution. We have a NAB accredited Master of Architecture program, but there are 3 pathways for community college students or transfer students. We have the 2+2. We have the 3+2, where in their junior year, they can apply to the Master of Architecture program, and they can also do the 4+2. Our undergraduate program is a BS in Architecture and Environmental Design, and it was initially conceptualized as a feeder to our other master's programs. We have an accredited Master of Landscape Architecture and a Master in City and Regional Planning. So the undergraduate was supposed to be a feeder to those programs. However, it started as an architecture-heavy feeder. So those are the 3 paths that they can take. Our transfer student enrollment in 2008 was at 16, and we saw a really steady increase of transfer students thanks to our community college sisters, sister schools. And in 2012, we really shot up. I mean, shot up, not shut up. Sorry, my Filipino accent is starting to show. Our transfer students are very diverse. We have 39% who are African American, 34 Caucasians, we have 11% Asians, we have Latinos, and others. We have 5 Native Americans, and we have 1 Pacific Islander. Talk about diversity. Student voices. They said their transfer to Morgan was primarily a financial decision. Rather than go to the state school in Maryland or to a private school in the DC area, Morgan was really much cheaper. Of course, their parents helped them decide that too. Our program and our school has credibility, and they know that our professors are trained just like other schools. They come from prestigious universities. Also, the 3+2 was a very attractive sort of incentive for them to come to Morgan. And the sort of increase in enrollment was also because of our new building. We occupied our new building, LEED certified building, last year in August, and with that, it really shot up in terms of enrollment. And so, it's funny because we had about 2 hours of a focus group, and all they can say was, we love Morgan because of the building. So, we say, hey, buildings shape us and shape our attitudes. It certainly did or does. And then One of the things they said, though, was many of their community college professors gave them more attention than their university professors. And coming from an administrator's perspective, I think that's also because Morgan is a Carnegie classified research university. Therefore, our professors are, to a certain extent, have to grapple with the tenure and research, bringing in grants and teaching. And here is my take on this. Transfer students are definitely more prepared than our traditional students. Technically, they're like way up. Psychologically, many of them are so focused in finishing the degree. And I noticed that many of our traditional students think that college is an extension of high school, while the community college students are, they know that they have to finish, they know that it's costing them and their parents money. And not only that, we notice that their work ethic, and it's something that the community colleges do so well that we need to learn from them. But the work ethic is superb. They come already networked with each other. Many of our traditional students come in as an individual, and then they start looking for groups, maybe even on their sophomore year. But the community college folks or transfer students are already gelled. So and we know that in any design education, having that strong network really helps in retention. The challenges from an administrator's perspective, the integration of our transfer students with our traditional students. As I said, many of them are technologically advanced, and so I heard from them, the other students, they don't take their courses seriously while we spend so much time here, and they're saying that when they look at the work of the traditional students, they're saying, wait a minute, we learned this like 2 years ago, why can't they be like us? And one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that our transfer students are then given that extra attention so that they're not discouraged, but they're challenged. Here's one thing that I, as the dean, I have to report our retention numbers every year. And in the state of Maryland, the retention rate is calculated by the number of students freshman students that then come back to enroll on the second year for their sophomore year. And transfer students are not even in the mix. They're not counted in the formula. So we are, as deans, assessed by our retention rates, and oftentimes it's our transfer students really that, again, although they're not part of the formula, their retention rates are much, much higher. And so that's a challenge that I face. And the university puts so much emphasis on the retention rate in terms of funding, because that's also how the state then gives us resources. If you have a low retention rate, they'll think twice about giving you what you ask for. Another challenge is helping the transfer student grasp the broader world. Based on their voices, I kept hearing, why do we have to learn theory? Why do we have to learn history? We just want a job. We just want to be able to land a very good job where we can use our skills. So helping them understand that a design education is much more than a job. And so I'm sure that with the help of our superb faculty, we'll eventually achieve that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to maybe sort of talk about my school as a case study, and I'm sure there are others like Morgan that are similar. I arrived at Woodbury as their chair in 1999 from SciArc and USC. At that time, Woodbury was about 225 architecture students and an interior architecture program of about 65. We had just a B-Arch and the Bachelor of Fine Arts in Interior Architecture, and we currently have expanded to have M-Arch at both of our locations, one in LA and one in San Diego. San Diego has about 100 students. It was started well, we've been accredited since 1995, so when I arrived, they'd only been accredited for 5 years. In 1998, we established our San Diego program in a really interesting kind of, it was Geraldine Forbes, who many of you know. We made a deal. We signed a memorandum of understanding with a San Diego community college, Mesa College. And we worked with them 2 years to adjust their 2-year program to be identical in the curriculum as our first 2 years. They got that through. It took them a couple of years through their board. And so we partnered with them, and they taught the first 2 years, and we taught the last 3 years. We still have that agreement with them, but we also started teaching the first 2 years down there and have a small cohort of students. Our program has grown. We now have 650 or nearly 700 students in the School of Architecture. The LA architecture program has been as large as 500. No, maybe, is it 400, Anglo? So when I first got there, the applicant pool was about 50% freshmen out of high school and 50% transfer. Many of those transfer students going into first year because while some of them went to a community college, they didn't have transferable courses. A lot of the community colleges did not have studios. And so they were able to transfer maybe a drawing class or a materials class. So we realized that we wanted to start to reach out to a lot of the local schools and talk to them about their curriculum and encourage them to have design studios that were transferable. We actually have many articulation agreements with some of the Southern California schools and even in Northern California, in which students can either transfer into the third year or the second year based on the number of studios. We recently found out that there's the computer classes that they're teaching in the community colleges aren't as technically advanced as the ones that we teach. So that has become a stumbling thing for placement. The students end up having to come in because we have more advanced software. And so we're reaching out to have the community colleges try to advance that. In recent years, our enrollment, at the height, we were getting as many as 120 new students a year. After 2008, it's down probably closer to 100, and our freshman application have greatly fallen, and our transfer student from community college applications have really risen. So we know that architecture students and parents are looking at teaching that, or looking to the path through the community colleges as a way of getting in and saving money. We do have a number of really strong feeder schools, and we keep our relationships with them by going to their reviews and maintaining kind of connections with their faculty. And some of those stronger ones I'll just mention are Mesa College, as I said, East Los Angeles College, Pasadena City College, Orange Coast College in Orange County, San Francisco City College, Cosumnes River College. DuPage in Illinois is a real big feeder of ours. And some of the second-year, two-year feeders are Palomar College, Southwestern College, College of the Desert, Mount San Antonio, Ventura College, Pierce College, College of the Sequoias, and Marin College up in the Bay Area. So one of the things that we've done with some of the schools that actually do are consistent feeders is we established a thing called the Woodbury Prize. And what it is that we invite students to put together a portfolio to compete, and then Woodbury faculty choose the strongest portfolio. And so what we do is this encourages more applicants, and we then give the prize winner from each school, and we have about 4 of our feeder schools that we do this with. We give the prize, it's a half tuition scholarship, so it's basically half tuition. All they have to do is keep a B average to keep going. And by the way, all the schools that we have the articulation agreement, they have to have a B average for us not to look at their portfolio. So if they have less than a B average, we have to look at their portfolio and make sure that we can place them where the articulation agreement states we should. And I didn't mention that we are a Hispanic serving institution, which means you have, I think, more than 20 or 25% Hispanic students. We have about 40%. We would also be an Armenian serving institution if there was such a thing. And we're almost a Vietnamese serving institution as well. This helps us to get some federal funding. The last thing I'll say is I've participated in a statewide effort that was sponsored by the AIA California Council, which was called the Architectural Education Summit, and the purpose really was to increase the number of students who are on the path to licensure, and it ended up that we focused on community colleges, and there are about I'm going to say over 50 community colleges in the state of California that actually have architecture in the title of their 2-year programs. However, our concern in this group was that a lot of those programs that have architecture in their name aren't really teaching architecture that in a way that they can actually get advanced placement in the schools, and so this is kind of a problem. They're still like working with magic markers, and that's fine. But the point is that they're not. What our concern in this task force was that they may be misleading the students in terms of where they can get advanced placement. So a lot of those students spend 2-3 years in the program taking drafting courses, and then they apply to our programs, and I'm sure that other architecture programs in the state, and they just get placed in the first year. So the problem we have is, and we can work through AIA with our state legislature or the Department of Education, is like, can we get these programs to be more updated, or can we get them to drop the use of the word architecture in their program title, because they're really not training students to be seriously on the path, and we feel like that's sort of misrepresentation. So it's a sensitive issue that we have, but we're actually trying to work with AIA because they're the only ones who can work with the legislature or the Department of Education. And with that, I think I'll be finished here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Palmer-Wood. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis or an outline of what we do at Hudson Valley Community College. We're in Troy, New York. Up on the screen is Hudson Valley's goals and objectives, and this has to be up there because I think you need to realize a community college, their main goal is to take in everyone and train them to get a job when they're done with the 2 years. With our graduates, we take weekend 3. I don't know if you know what weekend 3 is, but when they do their testing, they cannot read, write, or do math at the college level. So with our program, we're an AAS, Associate in Applied Science. We have our new missions and goals. These new missions and goals are not on our website as of right now because we just went through program revamp. Here are our numbers. We have just this freshman group. We have 34% women and 66% men. We have a lot of demographics given to us through Hudson Valley Community College, but right now it is grouped under our civil name. Architecture used to be under the civil engineering department, and they've not pulled us out totally from the civil program. Okay, our program outcomes, again, these are new, not on the website. They will be posted shortly because we got final approval that we can update on our website so you can see all of our new information. This slide shows how we've changed. In 2007, architecture pulled out from underneath civil engineering technology, and we were only allowed to take in 18 freshmen, so we were capped. In 2009, we got a new advisory board, and they helped us do research on architecture. So it took us 2 years to get it pushed through the SUNY system. We got approved, and in 2011, we started a revised program. And you can see we started at 18 in 07, and we went up to 41 in 09, up to 54 in 11. Now, 2011, we revised the program again, and so right now we have our senior group that's in the new program. And this particular summer, we had over 100 applicants. We were only allowed to take in 72, and then with financial aid issues, it did drop a little bit for the starting students. This is a planning study that we had in 2007, and this is what the students see for advising. I'm the architecture advisor, so I see all of the incoming freshmen, the seniors. In 2007, you can see bolded, the second year, we only had 2 design classes, Design 1 and Design 2. And you can actually see it was only 5 credit contact hours, 3 credit hours. Didn't transfer anywhere, which you guys would know that. So what we did is we changed it. This is our new plan of study. We're now at 69 credits, and then bolded, you can see there's a lot more courses, and my next slide's easier to see. We have a column under design, so we have 20 credits of design. We were not allowed to go above 5 credits for our design courses, and we're not allowed to call them studio courses. It's lecture lab, but they are true studio courses. We've got architectural fundamentals. We have Design 1, Design 2, and Design 3. Under the communications, we have Viz 1, which is, they learn 2-point perspectives, a lot of rendering techniques. Viz 2, they're introduced to the computer for the first time. And Arc Graphics they take in the fall of their second year, which is where they're using either architectural desktop or some other software, and they're learning a lot in that course. You actually see it in both columns for professional practice and communication. They are learning software, they're learning commercial building, they're learning commercial code, they're learning contract specs. We have right now we have a structural column. They take 11 credits in structures. They take a statics and strengths, so structures 1, structures 2, which is the steel and the concrete. This is where I like to note that our department chair is an engineer. That will probably always stay there, we'll see. And then we have a building science column. We've got building construction 2 and construction materials, so we got 5 credits. Over on the right-hand side, the 2 columns are the SUNY required core. We cannot change that. That's 21 credits. That's where they have their 2 units of English, 2 units of math, and they need to take a physics. So that gives us the 69 credits. I'm pushing my students. Another slide. This is a list of colleges that our previous graduates have transferred to. They've all transferred to these colleges under the old program, so we're hoping that we will pick up a few more colleges with the new program. Transfer should be easier, so if any of you want to work with us, let me know. We'll work with you. We also do, new last year, we do a guest lecture series. We get local architects, contractors. USGBC came last year. We even had the mushroom lady come. It was the one at the bottom. She's a biologist, and she works with a couple of former RPI students. She actually brought in a SIPS panel, and the insulation in the SIPS panel was made from her mushrooms, which I thought was pretty cool. We also have guest crits. It's the local large firms in the Albany, Troy area that come in and sit through our final senior presentations. So that's where I'm going to close, and thank you.
Hello. My name is Bart Cepeda. I'm with the Keene State College in New Hampshire. And I have my presentation in more like a bullet point format, so I'll read most of this to you. We are a 4-year liberal arts college that has a 100-year tradition and have about 5,500 students in the residential campus. We have 50-50 in-state and out-of-state mix of students, and 40% are first-generation college students in their families. Architecture program is about 10 years old, and it grew out of industrial arts program of the 60s. We award a Bachelor of Science 4-year degree. 80% of our students are from out of state, so they are primarily from New England, but we also have students from New York, from New Jersey, all the way down to Pennsylvania. Enrollment grew from about 25 freshmen 5 years ago to 50 this year, and we have overall 130 majors in the program right now. There's no portfolio requirement to enter the major. There's kind of this notion that not being accredited by NAB means that we don't have to discriminate in terms of admission process. And there's this notion that NAB strives to produce a perfect architect in a way, which is good, but perfection is prone to obsolescence, inflexibility, and difficulty in adaptation. Yet we are preparing students for jobs that don't even exist right now in the built environment industry. Why do our students come to our program? Well, for the most common answer is kind of a variation of the story that as kids they received a book about Frank Lloyd Wright and the Falling Water house, and that was given to them by their grandparents, and this kind of sparked this idea of becoming an architect. We recognize that the architecture profession is tremendously different from the old times of a lone genius, and the flexibility and adaptability are key issues that our students will be facing in the future. And our program is very flexible, which means that there are minimum requirements to graduate, but at the same time, we are in the same unit as product design, occupational safety, environmental studies programs, and we have individualized construction management major with management department. There's a very strong collaboration between those programs. Students are evaluated by advisors who try to assess what could be the best option after their first year in the program. And many are interested in minors and related disciplines, so that's where the collaboration with other programs is really handy. We encourage that collaboration and getting a minor as much as possible. That helps them not only find jobs but also prepares them to switch jobs in the built environment industry in the future. And we know that they will be switching jobs on average 6 times in their career. So this flexibility is really important. What is our distribution after graduation? Well, 1/3 goes to MArch programs, typically 2.5 years. And they are primarily in the Northeast, but we have students in Hartford University, University of Massachusetts Amherst, Syracuse, BAC, University of Michigan, Rensselaer Polytechnic, RISD lately, and Wentworth University. The rest finds employment at New England design, engineering, and construction firms. Many work for smaller sustainability-related consultant firms with energy performance, assessment, and retrofit specialties. Some work for larger construction companies like Skanska and Turner, and some find employment in the software companies like Graphisoft and Autodesk, and recently Newforma. And increasingly, they are entering non-for-profit sector. Next steps for us, we would like to be part of the process for the students to allow them to be licensed at some point in their lives if they choose so. So we don't want to be kind of a barrier. They come in to us and say, are you accredited? And we say, of course not. Is that a problem? Well, of course not. Here's the way to address this, and here's the way for you to go for the 4 years and then move into an accredited program if you choose so. So we would like to be involved in the discussion more so we can have this more streamlined. We recognize that not everyone has a personality type that can be classified as ENTJ, and we know that by some measures 30% of us are ENTJs in the architecture profession. and that architecture is a very diverse field where a variety of professional personalities can succeed and is succeeding. Increasingly, the diversity of personalities, increasing the diversity of personalities as opposed to thinking about race, sex, etc. Is more important, I think, at least in my opinion. Being more inclusive in personality type will actually lead to attracting more students that are diverse in other characteristics. We would like to work with MArch programs to make the transition upon graduation from our program easier. Having some sort of a pre-NAB or NAB light assessment or help from NAB would be very helpful, and if we can collect information during the time of studies and then be able to present that in some simple way during the admission process for MArch programs would be very, very helpful and streamline our process. Perhaps this is a task for NAB that should be seen as an investment in the profession at this time. We are working on articulation agreements with community colleges, and that is being pushed from above as much from inside. And universities in the region. There is some need for admission offices be more open to inquiring about our practices instead of relying on their matrices and formulas in order to transfer the students into the MArch programs. We would like to strengthen student-centered education. Our pledge to the students is that we will help you figure out how to build your architecture major, how to play to your strengths, and how to address some of your weaknesses. We are primarily educators, but we see ourselves as facilitators during the 4-year journey that the students are in with us. We would like to be included in the discussions about future of the licensure and accreditation as partners instead of the fringe of the profession. And we all, I think, have to realize that architecture is a small part of the built environment industry, and we are alienating ourselves in a big way, thinking that we are somehow special and more important than others. So, thank you.
Hello. I would like everyone to take a moment and try to imagine that you are 16 years old. You've got a fantasy about how you want to change the world. Nobody in your house speaks English. Nobody in your house went to college. You live with several members of your family, and you are basically responsible for either some younger sibling or some elderly sibling. You're probably going to be working, or you're probably working part-time right now. You want to make a difference, but you're kind of an outsider even in high school, but perhaps you're really good in drawing. Perhaps your father's in construction, as in he's a subcontractor for a concrete company. I'm not talking about Clark Construction. And you have these dreams. Your English skills aren't great, and nobody really emphasized math in your own household, if they even are paying attention to your homework. So imagine that person ends up being sitting in this audience, in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. That is the thing that I imagine when I think about community college architecture programs. And that person, whether they're 17 or 16 and they had this fantasy and how they're going to get there, or maybe they're 27 years old and somehow or another they just never got to college, or they have had kind of another disadvantage in their financial, cultural, personal lives, and they want to be these future architects. I'm showing you a series of images of student work from community colleges across the country. We're a bunch of architects. We like pictures. So I got a lot of pictures that just keep showing. And these is all work that was submitted in response to a survey that I sent out starting 3 years ago to all the community college architecture programs in the United States, including Puerto Rico and Hawaii, that I could find. Now, I originally thought, how hard would this be? I'll just Google and I'll find this site that says community college architecture programs, and I'll just write to all those people. That was one wrong assumption. It took me almost 3 years of going state by state, community college by community college, to see who had an architecture program that had an associate's degree. So I weeded out drafting institutes. Certainly they're valuable, but that's not what we were looking for. The word architecture technology, it's interesting that Norma was talking about that word architectural. That, I believe that was in the 1970s when technology programs were begun with federal funding, and so community colleges, our programs are generally funded underneath this mandate, and we're called architectural technology, which to most students, they don't know what that means, but I think to us in the table, that implies more of a technician, more than somebody who does have the fuller view, the multifaceted ENJG that from Keene College was talking about, that whole personality type. So I sent off these surveys. It turned out I found 167 community colleges in the United States that had architecture programs. Yes, California does dominate, as they do in lots of wonderful ways. And there are over 39 community colleges that have associate's degrees, as Norma was saying. Texas has 10 community colleges, matched with Illinois, which also has a large number of community colleges. Florida is the 4th state with the largest number of community colleges. So we might be thinking, why do those states have so many community colleges that offer architecture? I'm not going to get into that conversation, but I have a survey that I'll share with you about the data after I kind of inoculate or indoctrinate you with all these images of student work, which talks about where the community colleges are in the United States, what their faculty is, what our staff is. And I just go back to that imagination of that future student. My effort here is, I say I stand here representing Montgomery College, which is the community college that I teach at. Don't tell anybody I've been there 23 years. I never tell students that because I don't want them to think I'm some old fogey. So I just say I've been here over 10 years, and they seem to be amazed by anybody who's done anything for 10 years in a row. And my interest in doing this was basically because my students were not able to transfer into a 4-year school locally. And I must say it was Melvin Mitchell, who worked to establish the undergraduate program at Morgan, that I worked with to develop an articulation between our program and in Baltimore at the program. We also had developed a relationship with Catholic University of America, but it just didn't seem like enough. It seemed like we should be able to go to more. These students, it was a hot kids. They should be able to go somewhere else. The interesting thing that I have found about community college students, or community colleges in architecture, is nobody says, where did you start school? Nobody has probably asked anybody in this room, where did you start college? They say, where did you graduate from? And that is the school you put on your resume. It is astonishing how many people, how many architects we know, including Mickey Jacobs, current president of the AIA, who started at a community college in Detroit. And for whatever reasons we started these community colleges, now community colleges are also offering students beyond more than the gen ed. They're offering them an opportunity to figure out, what is the career I want to go into? So in a community college, if a student majors in architecture, it's because somewhere along the line, they said, oh, I think I'll try this out. If they don't finish the program, that's lifetime learning for me. That's just a future client of an architect. But that's kind of our purpose, is to give people that experience. And those who do choose to follow architecture, it might take them 3 years to get through there. They might be having a part-time job and flipping burgers and going home to pick up their younger sister or something. But when they finish, they are focused on where they're going. And this is sort of matching what Dr. Akers was talking about. I thought that was only true at my school, and then I began to realize, no, it's true at all the schools. So let me show you some statistics. This organization of people these community colleges, so I sent out this survey. I got had 118 answers by last summer. First I got 30, then I got a few more and a few more. Finally, I began to call deans at community colleges and say, nobody has responded to my survey, and I'm sure I'm not popular with certain schools, but I did get the surveys back. I asked these, I met with Andrea Rutledge at NAAB in Washington. I thought, this is an important organization. How can a community college relate to the NAAB? But I thought I would ask her advice anyway. And Andrea said, you have come at the exact right time because the NAAB is about to start their 5-year reevaluation of their credits. So that summer, end of June, I sent out an email to all these community colleges, 167, and said, come to Washington. You can sleep in my house. We're going to meet at the AIA National Headquarters and have a conference and talk about what we have in common. It was really in thanks to the AIA who gave me that space to meet. So 22 schools from across the country came, and we talked, and Andrea came and talked to us about the accreditation board. And you're probably scratching your head saying, well, still, what's a community college got to do? And we weren't sure, but we wanted to have some opportunity to at least express what this hidden population could be benefited by. We came up with a series of recommendations and submitted them to the NAAB. I had an opportunity to visit Boston Architectural College with Ted Landsmark invited me up. A great opportunity from our students who already kind of gets the idea. And then we've had our first meeting of this organization called the Coalition of Community College Architecture Programs the day before the AIA convention in Denver, where 33 different schools came to show up. So it was pretty impressive that somehow or another 55 different schools out of 118 are listening or have the same concerns. So then this facts that I have here is kind of a summary of the data. And I'm saying I put this together for the NAAB. Oops. The ACSA guide of 2010, this is how it describes advice to transfer students. I mean this is no positive or negative feedback. This is what's in the guidelines. And it's quite candid. That, right along here, that transfer credits handled case by case. Students who want to transfer should be maintaining their academic records, keep a portfolio. Some community colleges have an articulation agreement with a specific school. Actually, my studies showed that less than 18% of those 118 schools do have any formal articulation agreement. Do not assume that prior coursework will meet professional course. Well, certainly, this is all true. So this is what a young student who's looking to transfer will identify. So here are some of the numbers as of July. The number of accredited schools of architecture, I have 119. Is it 107 or 119, Michael? Am I off? A little more. Okay. The number of states without a school of architecture are 4 states. The average number of schools of architecture per state. The states with 5 to 9 schools of architecture. Now, the reason I'm talking and looking at all these, why a state has an architecture school, is that a community college, the word community, is a big part of it, right? I mean, a community college student goes because they want to stay in their community. And when they go off to a 4-year school, in general, they're very attracted to a state, once again, making their community a little bigger. So I'm really standing here to represent the different community colleges in other states who want to go to your school. I'm not sure that, that Rensselaer, that my students from, Maryland would be eager to go to Rensselaer or Syracuse, although given a scholarship, I'm sure they would. But it does seem to be very much of a state thing, a local thing. The number of community college architecture programs, 167. I have listed, there are 8 states with no community college architecture program. The states with the greatest number, California, Florida, Illinois, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Texas. And the states of Florida and Texas are really unique, California as well, in terms of their relationship with the community colleges. So I thought, okay, one of my questions on the survey was, who are your faculty, and how many do you have? The comment that Dr. Akers said about community college teachers spend more time with their students, it's because we're not publishing. Although when you look at the number that you'll see on the next sheet, a large number of the community college, 75% of the full-time faculty are registered architects. And I have not gotten really followed up on this survey to see how many are practicing, because some of them, you know, that's keeping them busy, but they're not publishing, or they're not got research that they need to do. So the average student-faculty ratio is about 14 students per faculty, which is very pleasing to students. It's very pleasing to me as a coordinator, and it's very pleasing to me as a teacher. It's not pleasing to the community college administration. I mean, we're an expensive kind of program to run. We have our own little rooms. Nobody else can use our equipment or our rooms. But our students graduate, so we're very good in terms of retainers. So I really appreciate what you were saying, that difference between, our numbers might not be good, but our numbers look really good in terms of completion of the program. Just numbers of architecture majors, and I'll break it down right here with this number. The number of minorities. If community colleges are, now there's 118 schools that I've taken this information from. On the average, every year, they're graduating about 1,400 graduates. And of those, about 33% are minorities. That's a lot of people who want to go on into architecture. I've left a pamphlet on many people's tables just to say this is what about our organization. I would be remiss if I didn't take one moment, Corey, just to say something about my own school, because it's a great program too. And what I will boast about our school is the fact that we have in the AIA Maryland Design Awards, they gave 7 student design awards. One of the outstanding undergraduate for the state of Maryland, AIA, was a Morgan student who is a 37-year-old woman from Iran who graduated Montgomery College. 2 of the other awards were also from Montgomery College students. So we won, basically, I like to think we won 3 out of 7 awards, which is pretty good considering we're the community college. I have the curriculum here, but I'm not going to go into it. I did want to just show you works that come out of our students, whether they're sketching, whether they are doing exploded views, interiors, axonometrics. They love models. We all love models. That's why half of us went into this, is we love to put those things, draw those things, and build them. And there's just nothing to match that skill, whether it's learning how to use an X-Acto knife or to take your imagination and then try to bend foam core to meet that. This is Frank Gehry's coffee shop, which is kind of fun. So our students have been winning awards. They're ready, they're eager, they're older, they're focused, and sometimes they go off to school and they want to start a Montgomery College architecture club where they go off to another school. So if you have any questions about community colleges, please left my information, and I have some cards up here to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. A lot of potential clearly rests between all these different perspectives, and the people who are to gain would certainly be the students. And the way it stands now, it seems like one of the major problems is that the students aren't getting clear information to understand how to become an architect coming from a diverse set of backgrounds. Are there any questions from the audience for our panelists?
So I'm curious, I teach at UWM and we have articulation agreements with a number of schools, maybe one or two at least at this point, but I know that as we are revising our curriculum, we have discussions about how this affects our articulation agreements and dealing with transfer students. And I just wonder, maybe kind of more curious as to how nimble the community colleges are to responding or adjusting to our own changes as we change, like how they might change as well. Like that, just always having that conversation. There's a constant like internal conversation, there's an external conversation that needs to happen.
I would be glad to answer that. One of our efforts with this group is to collect all the transfer agreements and articulation agreements that any one of these schools has with a four-year school. And looking at those, for instance, at Texas, one of the things in Texas, and I don't know if anyone's here from the schools in Texas, right? One of the things like Texas Tech, San Antonio Community College is in the efforts of reaching out to get several articulations and sending that forth to us. We noticed that sometimes there might be 3 courses that blended together the four-year school will take as one, the architecture school, NAB school will take as one course. In other words, as opposed to going course by course, sometimes it's a blend. It's like, well, we teach this, we teach that. And they say, oh, well, that's similar to what we're teaching. At first I thought, oh, everything has to be equal. And I think we've begun to realize, let us, as community colleges, we'll be more flexible. And we will, if 2 courses would equal 1 course, that would be acceptable. I mean, I think that's one approach that's taking. The other approach is on a portfolio based. You see a student's work from a portfolio, and and you say for them, well, I guess they know how to render, or I guess they know how to make a pastiche, or they know how to do an analysis of a site precedence or something like that. Does that help?
I mean, I'll just piggyback. I mean, that's probably our biggest problem, is we make curricular changes and then recognizing that it affects the community college that we have an agreement with, which is in Texas, and that the 2 years that it takes for us to make the change then becomes 2 years for them to make the change, and so we're always sort of slightly
Out of sync.
And we do the thing of it's half of this course and half of that course, and half of that course will make up what one of our required courses.
If I could just add to that same example, the University of Houston has been trying to also work out an articulation agreement with San Antonio College because it's a program that we respect. We have former adjunct faculty teaching there and graduates, and we've seen their work. It's been held up by our making changes and then trying to get those on track so that we can meet our student performance criteria with those. But we've always looked at transfer. First, our program requires a portfolio for any design in addition to the transcript. But then we look at and say, okay, have you satisfied this in 3 courses or 2? And so we're able to work that out quite well. But it's not static. So, and we're getting less nimble in our university in making changes to programs. Now it's 1.5 years to propose a new course, so all of those things work against it. But we're still trying. We're going to make it happen.
I can kind of speak directly to this issue too. I'm Todd Gabbard from K-State. We have a very close relationship with one community college in University of Missouri in Kansas City. Their 2-year curriculum is an exact mirror of our first 2 years. And when we have an accreditation visit, the NAB team actually goes out to UMKC and reviews their program at the same time that they review us. So I think that there are ways to become very closely integrated. I was actually asked to come here specifically by my associate dean to kind of explore these issues of kind of increasing our relationship to community colleges. Obviously, the notion of enrollment and a number of financial issues that are squeezing everybody. I think that this is one really great potential way for us to kind of to address these issues. And I would ask you, my question is, in your discussion with NAB, has there been any sort of discussion about kind of a sort of a pre-certification of a 2-year program? You know, has that ever been kind of come up at all?
This doesn't work, does it?
It does.
Oh, does this work? Okay. I was really honored to be invited to attend the NAB Art Conference in Snowbird. So thank you very much to the NAB board for inviting me. And that certainly is a sticky thing about the SPCs. One thing that I was talking with Brian Kelly from the University of Maryland about was the idea that how about community colleges on our curriculum, if we identified this course satisfies these 6 SPCs. We think it does. We looked at it, we think it is. And then for the accepting institution to say whether or not it does, I think that's where the thin line gets drawn, is that's really for the accepting institution to make the decision. And I see Ted here. I know that that was one of the things in the responses was trying to look at that more clearly. Somebody else who can clarify what they said in the responses, the NAAB responses?
I don't want to respond directly to that question, but I wanted to just sort of pick up on the conversation that we've been having between Randy and my institution, and just as a way of cracking open the issue of curriculum. For years, my senior faculty kept saying no to articulated agreements. And this is the side of the puzzle I probably have never shared with you, Randy, but I have a lot of chairs between you and me, and I can duck. Retirement does have its benefits, though, is that with those folks now either having already sunset or about to sunset, change can happen. One of the things that we've been exploring is as we revise our undergraduate curriculum, we invited Randy in to meet with us to talk about what the ramifications might be. A lot of this stuff, and I think I was very impressed with the lecture series that we saw from the school in Troy and the one in New Hampshire, of seeing that a lot of this is building trust. And so a lot of this is about getting to know one another. And Randy and I have agreed to exchange reviewers for final reviews. I can imagine that some of the 4-year institutions could be offering to send faculty to participate as lecturers to programs that may or may not have robust lecturing budgets, but might be a way to enhance that, or send faculty members to participate in reviews. This is just a fantastic way to build trust and to build from the ground up. So I think there are ways that as we think about revising our curricula, that maybe we don't do that in a sterile faculty laboratory environment, but we think about how that might play outside the box and invite some critique from folks from outside.
That's a good point.
From my perspective, formerly at Catholic University, we had relationships with 3 different community colleges in the area, so Montgomery, Anne Arundel, and Northern Virginia. We were looking into having articulation agreements, and in some ways we were discouraged from doing so from our side, only because it would not allow us to be as nimble and as flexible as we could be as we changed our curriculum and as the community college changed theirs. So I think the first and foremost, most important thing is having that relationship and the communication open. One of the things that may be helpful in terms of graduate admissions for a student from a 4-year institution who wants to come into a 2-year program, I found that very few of my faculty were willing to understand programs that were not accredited programs, or pre-professional programs attached to accredited programs. So in an undergraduate admissions process, they can't know the kind of the idiosyncrasies of every institution, so those institutions prepare a statement about, it's a 2-page statement about how many of their students go on to which schools, what are the pass rates, all of those things at the high school level. It might be very helpful if you prepare a 2-page document that any student from your institution applying would be able to send with their application. It would make it much more clear and more streamlined on the graduate perspective.
What was included in the 2-page?
Sorry. I talk loud. So when you're reviewing undergraduate applications, the high school guidance counselor is required to send something that indicates how many students, the percentage of students that go on to college, the percentage of AP, the number of AP courses that are offered, how many students receive reduced lunch aid. So it gives kind of a perspective of a high school. And what might be helpful, not to say that we have to get into that kind of detail, but providing a context for the environment that they're operating in so that we better understand what they've been exposed to.
That's very interesting. One of the things we said on our recommendations to the NAB was to have architecture schools have on their advisory board, which everyone has an advisory board, have a representative from the local community college. It kind of follows with Brian's saying too, trust, just to get to know that person. They show up, they are a person, and it just, once again, it just builds a neighborhood. But that's a very good, very interesting idea.
It would help with the schools that we're not immediately familiar with. So we would get community colleges in New York, and we had to do a lot of research on to understand where those students would place.
Well, there's no reason why each community college couldn't be asked to put together such a document, and we could even come up with a format and say, okay, everybody fill out, have this, because it'd be a good thing to send on as with a transfer. That's a great idea.
I think I have comments from 2 directions, and one is on the curriculum side. I think those of us in accredited programs are always demanding, maybe, of the community college or the 4-year pre-professional not attached to an accredited program. What can you do to step up to our expectations, which I think is a little bit problematic, and I'm wondering what we can do to get around that. I love the idea, Michelle, of having the 2-page descriptor. I think we're going to need that more and more, because as many of us have moved on to MArcs as the accredited program, the 4-year pre-professional programs don't undergo a rigorous review. We're left to do that ourselves on an ad hoc basis, even if we're that 4-year program is in the same school as an accredited MArc. So we have to figure out how to work that out. My question is what you would like from us, maybe, to provide your students with more confidence in their path.
I think having like that, I know Catholic had a summer course or an extra course, which was kind of an introductory to make sure that transfer student could come in. Since architecture schools start in the fall, that's often a hardship for community college students because they don't always graduate, they don't finish in the fall. And so it's kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do for a semester? Well, you got to get a job. I think that is one thing that has helped, having maybe one extra summer, it's almost like a freshman orientation, but to learn what the vocabulary, who the players are, what's the system at your school. I mean, how do you go, because they haven't been there for 2 years. One of the wonderful things that I see about community college students when they go off to a 4-year school is they're just, in a community college, they don't have their own desk. Right? So they don't have their own desk, they don't have their own corner, everybody's bringing in all their supplies and going back to the car. And I think they love the fact that they get to a 4-year school and they get to see what the seniors are doing and the other juniors and the other studios. So even having them realize that this is a permanent, you have a permanence when you're in a 4-year school that you don't really have in the 2-year school.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
One of the things that we're doing, which is kind of like a summer program, Ingela, what's the thing that's like rework? groundwork. We have a groundwork program for our incoming graduate students, which is an intensive 2 or 3 week thing just before school starts. And we talked about actually making that open to undergraduate transfer students as well. We're also, because of the thing I mentioned earlier, where not all community college visualization classes are totally up to snuff with the latest software, we're developing our Design Communication 2 undergraduate course into a MOOC that we can offer for free online, so that we can get around that that problem, which is really interesting. The other thing I just wanted to say as a representative of the ACSA board is that we are realizing that we have to acknowledge the significant role that community colleges play on the path to an accredited degree. And so I think we're entering into a period where we're going to have to speak about maybe changing or adjusting or expanding the membership of ACSA to at least question expanding the membership to include pre-professional 4-year degrees and community college programs that would actually sort of qualify as a feeder school to a 4-year program or a 5-year program. And I think that what this means is really a significant restructuring of the ACSA bylaws and actually looking towards getting members of these types of programs sitting at the table and actually having programming changes in, say, conferences like this one. But I think that's what this whole meeting, and I want to thank Corey and Randy and everyone else at this table for sort of starting the discussion officially.
If I can comment for a second. I think building trust is really important, and we make a pledge to everybody that we send our students to that we will not send students who are not qualified, and we will not give them recommendations that are required to enter the graduate degree. So none of our faculty members will do that just to pad up the number of students that are going somewhere else. So building the trust is really key, being able to work with you, so we are willing to come down and see what we have. It's really important. Not treating this as something like it's a cyclical problem, because now you're having trouble with attracting students, and 5 years ago you had plenty of students, so you could discriminate in that regard. So not really treating this as a cyclical problem is very important, and we'll address this, I think, in the long term. And at the same time, there are 5 different collateral organizations. I think there is a lot of overlap and a lot of redundancy going on, so streamlining some of that might be in line. A little revolution, I guess, maybe, who knows, would be helpful. And bringing us on board is really important.
I just was wondering if anybody had any experience with people applying from for-profit kind of schools that are out there and popping up. It seems like I see commercials on TV all the time for drafting degrees and things like that from like IIT or Virginia College or some of those for-profit things. Has anybody had any of those?
We actually, if students come to our program and they say, well, I got a degree from the Maryland Drafting Institute, I say, well, that's good experience, but none of that transfers. That's not college. I mean, we're all colleges. We have to meet the standards, higher education standards also. So if you went to an institute, well, that's nice. Maybe you'll do well in a building documentation class, but that's not what we're about. And in the architecture programs that I'm looking at, you have to have English 101 and math, college level math, to take the architecture classes. So that in itself kind of sets the bar, because my sense is courses can't transfer if a student's not even in English 101. So that's how I'd answer that myself. that your experience?
Sounds like a no, Jory. I think most schools probably require regional accreditation for any transcripts or for programs that students attempt to transfer in from.
I believe there are a few for-profit art institute, for instance, that are also regionally accredited.
Yeah.
So that's another category there.
On the issue of profit, though, at some point with the Missouri example where the first year becomes identical to the accredited schools, and some schools are trying to transfer students into second and third years, is there a point where this becomes direct competition for the students? I mean, is there a point where just trying to manage our numbers, that there's the optimism that we've kind of established here, is that a roadblock? Do people here, thinking back over the past couple of years, do you think about community colleges as competition, or do you think of them as feeder schools for yourselves? Good.
A lot of times I wonder when I meet someone and they say my kid's wants to be an architect, and I do some outreach into the high schools with a PowerPoint, and I must say, the first thing I'll say is, okay, so how well are you doing your SATs, and how are you doing this, and can you afford to go to a four-year school? And generally the inclination is, if you're a really top student and you can afford to go, apply to a school of architecture. I don't mean to downplay community college, but you'll have a great experience and go, and you're focused. So that's how I handle it.
I think our time is getting short, so this might be the last question.
I would be willing to say that there is some competition from those community colleges that are in our state, Texas, that are now trying to begin to offer four-year degrees.
Oh.
And that does begin to be a competition.
A four-year non-accredited degree.
Well, not four-year degrees in architecture, but that's a general move. For instance, interior design, I've seen that happen. And so there are a number of community colleges that are working towards that. And it hasn't happened in architecture, but.
Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you very much.